All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining today's joint lunch and learn between Claritas and Star One Credit Union called Is Everything You Thought You Knew About Your Customers and Members Wrong? I'm Michael Ciccolone. I've been with Claritas for 7 years. I started my career in the big data space 15 years ago with a company called Nielsen BuzzMetrics. BuzzMetrics aggregated unsolicited consumer conversation online from blogs, boards, forums, and social networking sites before social media had even been coined, and then made sense of this unstructured text and aggregated insights into actionable insights that a brand could take advantage of. From there, I jumped around several different Nielsen companies, including Nielsen Online, Nielsen McKinsey Insight, Nielsen Catalina Solutions, and here I am now with Claritas, which up until 2017 was a Nielsen company under their consumer activation division. I'll say that during my tenure here at Claritas, I've been privileged to have partnered with over 200 credit unions, ranging from 100 million in assets to 100 billion in assets, helping them better understand the financial behaviors and attitudes of their members through the use of Cycle Premier and appending it to their customer base and membership so that they could start building a financial profile of who their best members are.
My name is Ryan Behringer. I'm Vice President of Marketing for Star One Credit Union. I've been working in financial services marketing for the past 20 years. Started my career actually in credit unions about 20 years ago. Worked for a small credit union in the South Bay in California. That credit union was acquired by a larger credit union out of the Midwest. Worked there for a few years as head of marketing and regional business development, after which I decided to take a left turn and go into the commercial banking space, where I was head of marketing for Bridge Bank, which was a big competitor to Silicon Valley Bank, which met its unfortunate demise recently. But Bridge Bank was a big competitor in the tech and innovation banking space. I worked for Bridge Bank as head of marketing for about 5 years until it was acquired by Western Alliance out of Phoenix, Arizona, at which point I stayed on, still heading up the Bridge Bank division for Western Alliance, and then got the job to also manage Torrey Pines Bank marketing down in San Diego. So I was sort of head of regional marketing for California for Western Alliance's California banking divisions. So really pleased to be here. It's nice to see a few familiar faces in the crowd. I'm excited to talk to you about my journey with Claritas.
So what are we going to cover today? What will you learn in the next 45 minutes? We're going to start with how to identify high-value clientele. Now, what one financial institution considers high value is going to be entirely different than another financial institution that has similar asset size, similar footprint, similar member count. And the idea is, again, is that every credit union and financial institution is unique, so it's not a one-size-fits-all type of question to answer or problem to solve for. We're then going to talk about how to create efficient and effective multi-channel engagements. At its most basic level, an efficient and effective multi-channel engagement is all about AOC. And that's not your duly elected congresswoman from New York. That's audience, offer, creative. If those three things match up, you're going to have a successful campaign. Last but not least, we're going to talk about how to optimize campaigns in flight. So in-flight optimization is going to be critical to the campaign's success because you're maximizing the efficiencies and effectiveness of your advertising dollars in real time. You don't need to wait till post-campaign to do a measurement analysis to understand what's working and what's not working. And so if you're running a multi-channel campaign across display and social, you could see how display is performing versus social. If one is performing better than the other, you can optimize those ad dollars and reach one channel that is performing better than the other. Same thing with different creatives. We're going to focus on that. And then to start, we want to talk about, so how are financial institutions identifying customers and members today? Through talking with hundreds of banks and credit unions every year, there's a range of methods and tactics that are used, and if we were to boil this down into kind of a good, better, best approach, good would be broad strokes marketing, where you're attempting to reach everybody in your footprint. Everybody's a potential member, so therefore you're going to blanket everyone in ideally someone would come on board and sign up for the product or join the credit union, join the bank. Better is refining your campaign strategy and including some sort of trigger data or survey data to narrow down the focus of potential prospects. And then best being a segmentation analysis where you are mining rich consumer insights from your existing members and customers and then leveraging those insights to create a highly targeted precision marketing campaign where you're spearfishing prospects on a one-to-one basis versus casting a wide net and hoping that you catch the right fish. And so Ryan, that's kind of how we got here today. It was about 6 months ago. We had delivered a segmentation analysis to you. You had circulated it internally to several folks in the credit union, and we started talking about what are the strategies that banks and credit unions are leveraging today, what's working, what's not working. Your peers had a lot of feedback on the different approaches they were taking. And maybe you want to go ahead and expand on that and kind of talk more about your experience.
Let's do it. So I thought I'd start at the beginning, which for me was about 1.5 years ago at Star One Credit Union. Just a little bit about Star One. We are unique. We are $10 billion in assets. We do that with only 6 branches and about 250 employees. We have maybe one of the best efficiency ratios in the country at 0.66. We are truly unique. We've had an operating philosophy that from the beginning in 1956, when we were chartered to serve Lockheed Missile and Space Division employees in Sunnyvale, California, our operating philosophy was originally and has been since keep expenses as low as possible and keep member value as high as possible. Just elegant, simple. So that has led us to where we are today, which again, $10 billion in assets, very low footprint. We do a lot with just a little. We have since opened our doors to the community. In 2001, we expanded and opened our doors to Santa Clara County. And since then, in 2021, we opened to the adjacent counties to Santa Clara. So it's an interesting model. It's a great place to be. I'm really happy I landed there. And it was an interesting sort of landing, if you will, because a few weeks into the job, we were having our spring strategic planning session. And my role in this spring strategic planning session was to work with our CEO and do a presentation on who are our best customers, our best members. So I'm like, I don't know, I'm just new here. I haven't had time to get acclimated, but nonetheless, the session had to happen, and I had some questions to answer. And so I used a couple of different options to try to arrive at some answers, and I wanted to walk you through kind of what did I have available to me at the time. Option 1 was the credit union was running this segmentation model. Some of you may be using something similar. To my shock, this was the same model that we had been using 20 years ago when I started at the credit union originally, a different credit union. And the shocking part is that it hadn't changed. It hadn't been updated. And so the two inputs for the model are age and income, right? Define people by age and income. And when I just looked at the numbers, household income for defining like the best sort of upscale member, the household income definition was like $125,000 a year for household income. And in Silicon Valley, that's just not going to get you very far. In fact, if you look at housing and urban development data here, $125K a year is actually considered low income in our market. Yet we were running this model that defined those members as our better sort of high income members. So horribly outdated and limited. People aren't just defined by age and income. And I wanted to understand who they were as people. All right, so option 2, we did have some profitability information for our members, and we did do a percentile ranking of their profitability, created different profitability segments, got some interesting insights there. Of course, the most profitable members are the ones that use our services and products the most, keep the highest balances, borrow from us for their mortgage loans, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, helpful. Yes, some insights coming from this, but still, it's just a very sort of product-driven idea here that profitability is going to define a particular segment within your customer member base. So again, we used it, but again, still just limited in my view. I really wanted to understand who these people, as humans living in this world. So okay, what do we have available? Again, it's like week 2.5. What do we have available internally in our data set to help me answer this question? And maybe like some of you here, our situation was our demographic data just was rather incomplete. We tried to get creative. We said, all right, well, if we've got an email address on file that ends in a .edu, maybe we can use that to figure out like how educated they are because we'll know what school they went to. It was fun. It was a great idea, but only accounted for whatever 5,000 of our email addresses out of our 126,000 members. So, it was directionally interesting when you try to kind of stitch the story together, but did not paint for me at least like a very confident picture of who our membership is. So option 4, totally legitimate, just like asking around, People have been working at Star One for 20, 30 years, and they've had great interactions with members and great insights, and there's just sort of this internal sort of cultural knowledge that absolutely dig into and use that as an input. Very, very helpful to understand the anecdotes, to hear the stories, but you can't really build a model on anecdotes and stories. Again, I think it's directional. I think it helps to enhance the data that you're starting to gather, but certainly not sufficient to do something that is repeatable and scalable over time. But again, being the new head of marketing here for Star One, I really wanted something that was reliable, something that was data-driven, something that I could use to actually build a strategy and a plan around. So I started at the beginning. STP, segment, target, position, just the classic marketing framework, and so helpful to just, okay, what do we need to do? First step, segmentation. And my goals here were, as I've said, to learn about our members as people, to fill in our demographic data gaps, to take the sort of data first but augmented by anecdotes and stories approach. So again, data first. I wanted to learn about people's financial behaviors. Again, it's just only so useful to view them as product relationships, but I wanted to know what could we maybe expect from different segments in the future. And again, something that was testable, something that I could verify, and something that was ultimately repeatable, because this was going to be and is now our model. And so something that we could scale up and use on a repeated basis. So I was thinking to myself, where should I go? Where should I turn? And I remembered I had this marketing research class back in my undergrad, and the marketing professor got up there and put up this cool tool on the screen for all of us students to use in our project. And it was this zip code lookup tool that and so you can go in there and you can plug in a zip code and you can kind of get this view of like, who are these people in this zip code from a demographic and psychographic point of view. I was like, I wonder if that thing's still there 15 years later or whatever, 20 years later. And so it was. So I did the search. I found it. I plugged in some zip codes. I'm like, yes, it's still there. This feels familiar. Maybe this is a good approach. And so did a little more research on Claritas, who I have not had worked with in the past. And literally went to the website, filled out a contact form. And by the way, you'll be surprised at how many people do not respond to form fills. It is crazy. But anyway, Michael did respond, I think, the very next day. And we started talking, and I had a lot of questions. And you should have a lot of questions if you're going to do this, because I really wanted to know, like, how is this going to work? How am I going to use this data before I make any kind of investment? Like, what's the plan here? So Michael did a really great job of tolerating my curiosity and actually bringing in some of the great people in this room. Ron, for example, Sylvia, who's not here, but kind of brought to bear the whole complement of the Claritas team to really get me comfortable. Like, how are we going to actually operationalize what we see here?
So Ryan, you can keep the clicker. I'll talk about Cycle Premier quickly. How many people are familiar with Cycle Premier or have leveraged it in the past? Okay, good. That's great. So Cycle Premier is our financial services segmentation model. It's our flagship segmentation model. It's been around for 50 years. It's comprised of 60 segments. Segment 1 is the most affluent. Segment 60 is the least affluent. And then there's 58 segments in between that roll into 12 different life stage groups. Every segment is built against 8 core drivers, and that's age, urbanicity, presence of children, home ownership, technology use, and then IPA, and that's not your favorite beer, that's income producing assets, and then home value. And so what makes this so valuable is that it doesn't matter if you have 1,000 members or 1 million members. Appending the data to your member file allows you to create a baseline financial profile of who your members are that you could then build off of. And once those codes are on your file, that alone is going to give you insights into understanding what segments you do best with. But it also opens the doors to a lot of different ancillary products that Claritas offers, like propensity data sets that can tell you which segments have the highest propensity to be in market for specific financial products and services. It's an incredible tool for cross-sell and upsell, but then also acquisition as well. And the way that we do this is we take in your member file, your customer file, and we append that segment code 1 through 60 to each and individual, every record that you send us. And then we pass it back to you along with a summary, a distribution summary of how many of your members or customers fall into each of those 60 segments. And again, it gives you that baseline profile that then you could build off of. And Ryan will talk about that a little bit more.
So this was our journey for going through the process that Michael just outlined. And I hope that as I go through the journey that it gives you just some little nuggets so that if you intend to embark on a similar journey, maybe there's just some practical takeaways here that you can learn from what we did. So again, starting with that append process, we appended the codes to our entire membership file, all 60 of them. And again, up front, I was like, how am I going to deal with 60 different segments? That feels a little overwhelming. And so we opted to work with Sylvia and the data team to figure out, all right, let's create some larger target groups that are combinations of these segments that have attributes that are similar to each other and that share propensity. So we looked at which segments are highly likely to be members of Star One historically. Let's group them together. Let's look at average propensity. Let's look at low propensity. And then let's look at what do these segments have in common. Age ranges, income, education level, type of occupation, et cetera, et cetera. And this was our result. On the left, we worked with Sylvia and team to kind of define our market now using this new definition, these new target groups. Said, all right, here's the Star One market. Here's where we do business on the left. And on the right-hand side, this is what our membership looks like in comparison to the market. And what was immediately, I think, surprising or just strange or just kind of an interesting moment for Sylvia and the team was, you guys have a lot of these really affluent members. You have a lot of 1s, 2s, and 5s. And that makes sense given our initial charter, which was to serve essentially rocket scientists in Silicon Valley. And then, of course, ever since then, we've been there this whole time. And as you know, there's a lot of innovation and well-paid, bright minds that are in Silicon Valley and that joined Star One. So we've done very, very well with some of those really affluent segments. But again, this helped us to understand, all right, now we're getting somewhere. Now we have a richer view of our membership and where we have done well and where some segments have not historically joined Star One. So again, we passed the file. You can see that in the column on the far right, we dropped in the cycle premier code. The point here is that this is the step where you want to be bringing that code in, right, that third-party predictive data, together with your own data. It's not enough to just say, all right, this record's a 1, and then we're satisfied. You need to say, no, no, no. This record is a 1. Now how have they actually behaved at the bank or credit union? What does the relationship look like? This is the step where you're validating and you're testing the data that you just received from Claritas. So we went through, we dug in deep. And that, you know, for me, that was the really fun part about this project is, all right, now you get all this stuff into a spreadsheet. You start building these charts. You look at what has happened over time. You look at all these different product relationships and average balances. And you start to, again, really validate what's going on here. And you start to get some insights through that process. So I just wanted to share a few of them with you. So this chart is the segments that we produced, that created, those target groups. And what we've done here, you're looking at average deposit balance per household by tenure. So on the far left is member households that have been with us for less than 1 year, going all the way out to 10 years and then 15 and 20. So we can see over time how they behave, because new relationships do need time to mature. You don't get big deposit balances right up front. At least for us, those tend to build over time. And so the insight here was, like, we always knew that we had a really strong core group of members that kept a lot of money on deposit with us. But actually, when you took this sort of more detailed view, you can see on average, there's actually 3 different segments here that hold very similar average household deposit balances with us. And in an environment where deposits are just the main topic of conversation in almost every discussion internally, this was really, really helpful to understand who are those core depositing segments. In this case, we had our money mavericks, as we ended up calling them, but paired with a couple of retiree segments. We called them prosperous pensioners, and then we've got this more rural segment that is retired sort of outside of our core footprint. So again, this is where you get into the data, you do the charting, and suddenly you're seeing trends, and you're learning, and you're getting insights right away. Another view of this is we took relationship balances entirely. So we looked at deposits plus loans on average by segment over time to see how are these segments behaving. And some interesting, you see that little spike there, that big spike in about 3 years of member tenure with our Money Mavericks. That was their response to the mortgage refi market. A few years back, there were some amazing rates, and we had one segment, even the next segment in orange, our family executive segment, responded to that market. And so we could see, like, oh, these are the real estate-focused segments. They obviously took advantage of what we were offering at the time. In contrast, one of the groups that we identified in this process was kind of a limited investment group. These are members that have not really typically, these are segments that have not typically joined Star One, and that don't quite offer maybe the same level of predicted value over time. And so we validated that, and that dotted line at the bottom, that's our limited investment group. Turns out they never really reach the same balance potential as the other groups in our membership. So again, you get into the data, you start charting it out, and you start to tease out these insights, and then you want to validate that internally. Does this make sense? For us, it just kept making sense with every new chart that I developed. And including this one. Again, this is now a market-facing view. This is, all right, we know who the best segments are because we've got some interesting third-party predictive data. Now we've taken the step to validate that data. We've paired it with our own internal data, and we've looked at what these relationships actually look like, right? Are the predictions coming true? The answer was yes. Now let's look out into our market, which in our case is a 9-county field of membership in the Bay Area, and figure out where are they? Where are these segments, and to what extent do our different counties offer the potential for us to grow? Sometimes without a view like this, when you have a multi-county field of membership or you have multiple markets, if you don't have this kind of understanding, sometimes it's like, well, we should go in that county, we should go here. Why aren't there more resources being placed there? And so this kind of just helps level set everybody and get everybody on the same page as to this is why we're making investments in county X, Y, or Z, as opposed to others. Also point out that even though the total population in some of the counties is much lower and some of our best segments show up there a little less, there are still unique, in this case, deposit opportunities, deposit relationships to be had, because that yellow bar, that's our prosperous pensioners, and we saw that they have great average deposit balances. So this kind of gives us a view of like where we should put our core resources and then where we can do some sort of rifle level spear fishing, if you will, into other markets for very specific tactics and goals. I think a key element and a key part of how this has been successful for us and maybe where it hasn't shown value for others in the past is that they kind of do the exercise once and then they get the data and they learn some things and it's like, that's great, that was really interesting, let's move on. That's totally not the point. The point is to operationalize what you've learned, operationalize the data, and in this case, I'm showing you some dashboards that we built internally. I was lucky enough to have a seat in the office right next to Irvin, who happens to be our Power BI pro. And together we kind of worked through building these dashboards, and it was not that hard to get here, by the way. So line up some resources if you're going to go through this journey to help you put together, again, an operationalized view of what's going on. In this case, we've got some filters up top where we can now target, or we can, filter our real-time data based on our target groups, our 6 main target groups, or we can drill down to any one of the 1 through 60 cycle premier segments to just look for behaviors, look for product penetration trends, look for opportunities. So it's been really, really useful for our marketing team as we go out to try to build campaigns around this. And that kind of leads us into ultimately activating everything you've learned into acquisition. Michael.
Thanks, Ryan. Great stuff. So you've got all of these rich insights, and so what do you do next? And it's taking these insights, turning insights into action through a multi-channel campaign. I think back to when I first joined Claritas, I would get this question 3 or 4 times a week. I still get it now, but it's how does your data differ, your insights differ from something that we would get from a McKinsey or a PwC who could put together these great personas again and deliver these fascinating insights? And my answer is, and always will be, that it's the actionability of the data. Because Cycle Premier ties to each and every US household, and Claritas has an identity graph that links the online and offline identifiers for each of those households, you could take action against this data across several channels with precision. And so quickly, how many people are familiar with an identity graph? Okay, the Claritas people. Say it again. Yeah. So I don't have a visual for it, but when you think of an identity graph, think of a massive Excel spreadsheet where every row in that spreadsheet is a household. So maybe 120 million rows, followed by 4 or 5 columns. So let's say you've got Michael Ciccolone, 12345 Main Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, cycle segment X. That's the first column. Well, then we've got all of the email addresses that tie to that postal address, followed by the IP address that ties to that postal address, followed by all the mobile device IDs or MAIDs that tie to that postal address. And when you bring all of that together, you've got Big Brother 3.0, and there's nowhere to hide. But you can also take action against that data with precision, and it's an incredible asset to have. And again, that's just the way that the digital space is evolving. So kind of to that point, the marketing universe is expanding, and there's new channels to reach. 64% of Americans have listened to a podcast in their life. I would argue that number is possibly higher. For my mom, she's probably listened to several podcasts, but she doesn't know it's actually called a podcast, so that number is probably higher. 90% of households or people have email addresses. That number might not surprise anyone. To me, I sit there and I think, so who are the 10% that don't have an email address at this stage in the game, right? But the idea is that you can take action against any of these channels, and the persona analysis is going to be your roadmap for understanding what channels you should be leveraging. Maybe it's podcasting. Maybe your target audience has a long commute to and from work every day, so you want to be reaching the digital audio channels, or again, a podcast, maybe out-of-home advertising. And kind of to that point, so actually, sorry, one more thing. Should you do this type of analysis, you get these insights and you want to take action against the data, you're not held hostage to Claritas to activate on your behalf. All of our data, our syndicated segments, are available in every major DSP, DMP. They could be onboarded to your social platforms, to your Meta account, to your Google account. Maybe you have a rock star agency that you really enjoy partnering with. We don't want to leave you with the impression that you have to abandon them, to work through Claritas to activate against these insights. We can make those audiences available for your agency to activate against, or your in-house data team, whatever it may be. Anything that we produce because of that identity graph can be onboarded to wherever you want to activate against it. And so Ryan came to us, 6 months after we delivered this, and said, okay, I'm ready I want to do something with this. I want to turn insights into action. I want to target money mavericks. I kept calling it millionaire mavericks.
That was the original name.
Right, okay, millionaire mavericks. Money mavericks and online family executives. Can you guys come back to me with a proposal or a recommended approach on what we do next? Using the segmentation analysis, again, as a roadmap, as I said, we looked at it, and we came back to Ryan almost immediately and said, okay, well, we think you should do a multi-channel campaign across email, social, and display. And with any multi-channel campaign where we're using several different channels, we always want to start with a brand awareness for the first 1 to 2 weeks to warm up that audience to your brand, make them familiar with your brand, before serving them an email that's going to sit at the top of their inbox, because they're going to be more likely to engage and interact with that email or your offer if they're familiar with your brand versus, all of a sudden some random bank is sending you an email. So that's the approach that we take, and let's look at some of the creative that Star One leveraged. And so generally speaking, the top performing creatives are going to be those that are animated ads, competitive offers, or customer testimonials. And so Ryan's team really did an incredible job from start to finish with this. The imagery that you're seeing, the audience, the visual, they're happy, they give a sense of comfort. It's organic. It just leaves it was spot on, really. The next best piece, and so I don't want to toot Ryan's horn too much here.
Toot as much as you want.
I guess I'll toot away. Is the offer itself. So kind of going back to AOC, right? The audience was perfected, and now it's about the offer and the creative. The offer was 3%. It was 2-in-1. It was 3% on savings and then a $200 bonus on free checking. And so it performed really well. It was spot on. And then you've got a clear call to action. So you've got join today at the bottom in bright colors, encouraging that user to click on that button. Okay, I was gonna, we didn't know where we were gonna kind of fit this in, so we'll quickly talk about it. Well, what comes next? So maybe you're sitting here and you're thinking, okay, Claritas, we leverage all these channels, we're proficient in all this, we know all of this already. Well, what's the next big thing? Hopefully some of you were able to attend Rex Briggs' session yesterday. Rex, who's in the back over there. You can notice Rex, he's got this AI aura around him that kind of just follows him everywhere. Or, if you see him walking through the casino and people are throwing rose petals, that's him. But he gave a great session yesterday on AI and AIP and the benefits that it's going to bring to banks and financial institutions and credit unions. And again, at the individual impression level, it's optimizing the components and how it's served to each individual target audience in real time. So, we think that AI is here to stay. I didn't do the best job representing that because, again, with Rex in the room, we want to kick these things to him. If you guys are interested in learning more about kind of AIP and how Claritas is leveraging AI, we'd be happy to connect you with Rex at a later time. But this is what's coming and what we believe will be here to stay. And so now what, right? We've come full circle. You've got insights, you've taken action against those insights, and now it's time to measure performance, both in flight and post-campaign. And measurement is the key for determining campaign efficiency and effectiveness, whereas optimization is the key to improving both. And so with any campaign and any in-flight optimization, there's really two optimizations that are taking place throughout the entire campaign in real time. You've got the first, which is done through Facebook and Google and the machine learning. They know everything about you, your likes, your dislikes, what products you're most likely to buy. And so they're doing the machine learning optimization in real time, but then Claritas is also optimizing in real time. And we have an ad ops team that is going in and looking at the data on a daily basis and making optimizations and shifting the bid strategy on where those dollars are placed based on what they're seeing. So you kind of have this optimization going on that leads to tremendous results. So when you think about kind of, am I measuring campaigns? Am I doing this right? You want to ask yourself 7 questions. So can I measure the impact of my marketing campaigns on driving conversions and engagements? Can I effectively compare that impact across each of my channels and audiences? Am I using the right messages? Is there a particular type of messaging that works better across a specific channel or channels? Am I reaching my ideal prospects? Am I able to calculate cost per acquisition, return on investment, and return on ad spend? And am I able to determine the lifetime value of my customers? So Ryan, do you want to add anything there or touch on any of that before I keep going?
No.
Okay. Easy enough. So there's different ways to measure campaigns, again, both in-flight and post-campaign. And what you're looking at here is what we call our matchback report. Typically, this is done at the end of the campaign. The campaign we're referencing is still in flight, but we wanted to be able to come here today and show you something versus something that was just XXX, XXX, XXX. And so what you're looking at, again, is When we are running a campaign for you, we've built that highly targeted audience. So at the end of the campaign, we ask clients to send us a file of everybody that signed up for that product during the campaign timeframe, and we match that file back to the initial audience file, and we're able to provide these numbers and give you, a general CPA, attributable deposits, and basically assess how well did that campaign perform. And so, Ryan, I do think you want to add.
I will add something here, which is that, again, even though we're mid-flight here, we're looking at maybe a 3 or 6 month campaign. So we are relatively still early in the results. But in April for Star One, we had our highest new member growth increase in April over the past, I think it was 16 months that we looked at. So, so far so good. We're really happy with some of the metrics that we're seeing here. Michael and the Claritas team know that we also have another digital agency that we work with, and so we're kind of also taking this opportunity to kind of watch and see how they both perform with different tactics and see how the metrics shake out. Right now, what we're doing here looks very favorable to the other campaigns that we're deploying, so just really, really happy with what we're seeing so far. Look forward to seeing more to come.
I'm going to give you the clicker.
So this slide is all about just kind of, okay, we've done a lot with this, but there's like so much more that we can do. And so I just wanted to share with you how we're thinking about using what we've developed over the past year or so. The first thing is we're doing this brand project. Our brand is just kind of a little 1980s at this point, and we want to join the current era. And so we're taking this opportunity to do a little bit of a refresh. But we have our segmentation in mind when we do this. You don't build a brand just for somebody that's anonymous, faceless. You build it for a particular segment of the market that you are trying to ultimately position for. So what we've learned about our target groups is absolutely an input into this brand planning process. So again, just one way we're using it here on the branding side. When we're looking at the financial impact of what we're doing in marketing, we are doing customer lifetime value and net present value analysis on our membership and our campaigns. And it's really important that when you do that kind of stuff, you have a segmented approach so that you're looking at LTVs for segment X, Y, or Z. Without this framework in place, we wouldn't be able to look at it in the same way. And then finally, things like satisfaction and likelihood to recommend and net promoter. It's just infinitely more interesting to look at those metrics through the lens of a segmentation model, because sometimes you might get feedback that says you need to be doing this better, or I want to branch here, or whatever it is, and that's nice to hear, but it's also way more interesting to know who is saying that. And are they an active participant in your bank or credit union? Are they a user? Do they have the potential to be a great user? Those sorts of things should, I think, color how you prioritize and how you listen to feedback that you're getting from customers and members. I'll also say we're kind of just working on now like version 2.0 of this segmentation model. Even though we just finished kind of building this, some of these slides, I'm like, God, that was so long ago that we did that. But it was only like 8 months ago. But we are now thinking about like, okay, we can use this as an input because we've got all kinds of other data coming in from our mortgage applications, from our auto loan applications, from new membership applications. Let us pair now that first-party data that we're getting in real time with the third-party predictive data that we're getting from Claritas, now also in real time, and maybe build sort of a new version of this segmentation model that pairs both together. So the long story short, it's a model that we're using and revisiting and refining. And when I say using, the language, the target groups, the positioning, the strategy, all of that is now in our strategic plan. This is not just a marketing exercise that's confined to my group. This is visible to our board, to our entire management team, to all my colleagues. And so to that point, I try to share this as much as possible. When I say operationalize it, we put it in the dashboard. It's not just a marketing dashboard, that is a company-wide dashboard. So you want to kind of get this data, you get this model, and then you set it free because it's going to live a better life if you let it go. Some key takeaways, and I think I have some here. I do.
You do?
Apparently I have 8. Okay. First one, just obviously a hazy view of your customer base or your membership just isn't really useful. I think that the opportunities emerge when you get your membership and your customer base into focus. And you've seen some of the insights that we've come across and that we've seen just by doing the simple trend analysis and some of that charting. Sometimes whatever, maybe internally there's an understanding or a misunderstanding about who your customers are, or sort of personal opinions sometimes come into play. So again, something like this can really level set everybody and bust myths. One of my pet peeves, like the thing that sometimes people say, not at Star One, but in the past, is like, our customers do this, or our members always do this. And it's like, you just can't say that. You've got 126,000 people. You can't apply these generalizations to a group that just isn't homogeneous. So again, segmentation just kind of gets it specific. Clarity is actionable. Hazy views are not. And again, we've talked about the internal consensus. Socialize what you've learned, validate it. Don't do the exercise in a vacuum, but really get people's input. Bounce it off other leaders in the organization. Test it. That's part of the process. Find yourself an Irvin. If you don't have the skills on your own team, or you don't have an Irvin out front of your office or next to you, secure the data team, secure the IT team, whatever that internal resource is to help you get this stuff visualized is just going to be infinitely helpful to you as you go down your journey. I suggest developing a clear vision of how you will apply your model. And the way that I did that was, again, waste all kinds of time on the Claritas team's side, just asking question after question, wanting to be sure, like, all right, how is this all going to shake out? I didn't know that we were going to be able to leverage it as far as we have. Again, we've just been really curious. We've been using it. So I think just the more you do that, the more that you find you can do. But again, get that vision clear. Maybe some of this roadmap and some of the journey that we took will help you kind of figure out what your journey might look like. Make sure the model fits. Again, this is all predictive stuff, and it's really high-quality stuff, but you do have your own stuff too. So pair the two groups of stuff together and validate what you're seeing. Refresh the data. I don't know why this is something that would trip anybody up. This couldn't be easier. I literally took a file of our new members that joined in the month, and while I was on a call with somebody else, I should have been listening, but at the time I knew I needed to do this. I grabbed our file, I uploaded it to a great tool that Michael talked about earlier a little bit, the Web 360 tool, I think it's called. You just upload the file, you grab the codes, you bring it back down, feed it to your data team. It took me about 25 seconds. Super easy, not an excuse. Keep your data refreshed and keep it real time. And then lastly, incorporate the model, obviously, into your targeting, but share it across the organization. Get your peers to see this, get your peers to buy into it, get your peers to use it, get it into your strategy, get it socialized, and build from what you've established. And then, Michael, I think you have some insights.
I was just going to kind of close with tying this back to our process. We have a framework at Claritas, identify, deliver, optimize. And again, it's a full circle process, a proven process of taking insights and understanding who your best members and prospects are, being able to deliver multi-channel campaigns against them with precision, and then measuring the impact of those campaigns and understanding what's working, what's not working, what can you improve on, and start all over again. I mean, it's very simple. There's a lot you can do with it, and you don't even have to go through every individual step, but just appending the data to your file alone is going to get you started on a journey that, like Ryan said, he sent a web form and called him back, and here we are now a year later, and it's been incredible. It's been incredible for Claritas, incredible for Ryan and team as well. So we appreciate everyone joining today, and you know where to find us should you have more questions. And thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.